Hi, I'm Hannah Prescott. I started up Yonder Farm. Keeping a homer like 10 years ago as a wolfer, actually for Bill Barty over there. So Bill actually introduced me to his friend Mike Nakata, and he had this awesome piece of land on the Homer Bench. And so I was actually got a job with him fishing, set netting in Helbico. And so he had this land, and the next summer I asked him to put in a garden. And that's kind of how I started my whole farming experience, enterprise. I never really had experience for that. So I just kind of learned as I went, and so I had this small garden that I would tend to when I wasn't fishing. And the next year we put in a high tunnel. Actually, let me show you. Just gotta click on the computer, so okay. There we go. Good. So this first high tunnel put up in 2016. This is an outside garden, and basically I was just growing to grow and learn. I wasn't selling at that point. Kind of giving away food, putting up food. Let's see, 2020, we put in the 2 high tunnels on the left there. And Mike helped me financially with the high tunnels. NRCS has the program for the high tunnels, but you have to pay upfront, and I didn't have the financial ability to do that. So anyway, Mike helped me financially get started basically with the high tunnels. And so the first couple years, I grew corn and tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, in the first high tunnel, and then once the other 2 tunnels came about, I basically just grew corn in the 2 high tunnels because at that point I was out in Bristol Bay for a couple of years, so I needed something that could kind of take care of itself, and corn can do that to an extent. You know, because it grows once it gets above the weeds, it kind of just can take care of itself. So we did corn for, I should show you pictures. Okay, there's the outside garden. It's not very big. I have 60-foot rows, 60-foot beds, and it's 100 feet going towards the bay. So pretty small. Outside I grow broccoli, garlic, cabbage, carrots, beets, potatoes. There's some snap peas up growing on the fence there. There's raspberries here. And one thing that I found really challenging is growing fruit trees. So I have some fruit trees over here, but the moose keep getting them and the bunnies keep getting them, and so that's something that I'm trying to learn. Been struggling with that a bit. But I have apple trees, cherries, plums. I planted some hardy peaches, but they didn't survive. So, which isn't a surprise. A picture of the outside. These are my starts. Basically, I just have a shelf. Those metal shelves you can get at Costco with just grow lights, and I just use the solo party cups with the hole drilled underneath for drainage. Those are mainly tomatoes, I think. Tomatoes, some onions. That's a Jang seeder. What I use to seed carrots, beets, salad mix. I don't really do salad mix, but I will occasionally. And so I string, so my beds are 30 inches, 30-inch beds. It's pretty common for market gardening. A lot of implements and tools are developed for a 30-inch bed. So 30-inch bed with 15-inch row of walkways. And I string them, you can see the string there. And the little marks in the soil from the Jang. The Jang is a great cedar, it's precise. You have to kind of get used to it, but once you do, it's a great cedar because you don't have to go back and thin, like carrots especially. So there's six rows here of carrots. This is no-till basically. I'm trying to adapt more in the high tunnels especially. So the black tarp is called the silage tarp, and it kills all the vegetation pretty much. So you can see that's horse tail right there. It didn't kill it all. But I take a broad fork. This is a, can't see very well, but a broad fork to loosen up the soil. And then just plant into that pretty much. That's my neighbor's kid. She's helping me, but anyway, you can see she's using the broad fork to fix up the soil there. This is in early spring, I think late March that I start. This was just showing a gritter setup that I use. This is garlic I'm planting, but I have this tool called a gritter, and you basically just take it in the soil behind you, and it leaves these marks in the soil, so you know where to plant, you know, precisely. So you could use your seeder and just follow the lines, or you could you know, I'll plant broccoli. And it's hard to explain, but you could plant broccoli or cabbages in that grid system as well. It just makes everything uniform and even and spaces everything nice. Some asparagus in the high tunnel. That's an example of the planting. That's head lettuce. To the left, I'm hardening it off. So so every day for like a week, I just bring it outside for a couple hours. If it was really cold, I wouldn't do it. I think it was in the 30s maybe. Just to get the plants more used to adapting into the cold because they've been inside. So yeah, this was late March, I believe. And so yeah, so like a week I'll harden them off, and then I'll plant them into the high tunnel in that grid system. This is. So in the spring, I'll plant spring crops. I'm using that same grid system. You can see this, the head lettuce over on the left there. And then there's beets here, salad turnips. And once it gets like, it depends on the weather, but you know, late April, I'll start planting tomatoes in between my spring crops. So these are tomatoes here. And I'm just trying to utilize the space. I don't know, I've learned growing commercially that you have to utilize as much space as possible. So tomatoes, you know, they grow up vertical, so you can kind of plant. It's the same 30-inch bed system in the high tunnel, so you can plant, you know, things with your tomatoes. Yeah. This is an example of a mistake. They got too crowded. So you can see there the tomatoes with the head lettuce, and the head lettuce, it's just too much for the tomatoes. So in the future now, I only do the two outside rows like these two with the tomatoes in between. Tomatoes definitely got affected that year.
What do you mulch in there?
That's grass clippings. So there's, I put cardboard down in the rows and then grass clippings on top. Luckily, there's a lot of lawn, so there's a lot of grass clippings. That's another example of just a mistake. On the left, it's salad mix with tomatoes, and it's just too crowded. And then I have a greens harvester, if anyone has seen those, but it makes it really hard to harvest the salad mix with the tomatoes in there. You kind of, if you're doing salad mix, you kind of just need one bed of salad. And then here is radishes, and you can see it's sprouting out the tomatoes as well.
Hannah, are you saying that you won't plant tomatoes in between, or you said the out two rows, the outside two, but, or no, you won't mix the two greens?
I guess I mean, well, with the salad mix, I won't mix the two,
Okay,
but with other things I will. Like turnips,
well,
salad turnips, beets, carrots. I just, won't crowd them like that. No, there's some corn. So, yeah, that's the two. I don't grow corn anymore, but when I was, because I'm not fishing anymore. Last year was my first year full-time farming. Transitioning into farming and fishing, and it's just kind of too much. So anyway, last year I decided to farm full-time. So the corn was basically a way to farm and fish at the same time, like I was saying earlier. But anyway, so that's corn basically.
how many ears would you get a plant?
Usually just one, sometimes two. Yeah. Yeah.
Always wondered, I haven't asked anybody else.
Do you have a high tunnel or just a?
Yeah.
Yeah,
A small one,
okay,
yeah, it's about less than half the size of that.
okay,
Regular, whatever, 30 by 70, it's 24 by 32.
okay. Yeah, so it's all sweet corn. I did grow some flint corn. Like decorative corn. I have a picture of it, but that didn't really work out well. It needed more time, I guess. Anyway, that's an example of like section planting that you have to do with corn. So if you plant it all at the same time, it comes ripe at the same time. So in order to sell it, I needed to space it out. So every week I would plant new plantings.
What was the latest planting that you did?
I think the latest was like middle of June. And I actually got corn that year, but that was too late. I wouldn't do that again. Like I start in maybe April.
Did you have any observations on the, like, what the corn seemed to pull from the soil, or did you notice that you had to add or supplement differently or do it?
No, and the weird thing was, I got a soil test the year after and I had high nitrogen, so. And corn is a big nitrogen feeder, so I'm not sure.
Grass really.
Grass
The
clipping.
grass clipping, yeah.
Must have been really hot the year before.
Yeah.
High nitrogen.
Yeah. But no, it grew great and. Yeah, the soil didn't seem affected really.
Tasted good.
It's just more succession planting. Harvest time for the corn. We got like 8 feet tall, maybe. That's an example of the flint corn. It was fun to grow, but it just, I only got 1 out of my 5 plants, so. But it's really pretty. And then on the left, it's I think it's called American Dream. Just a hybrid wheat corn. Nowadays, they have corn, where they've kind of figured out, it's not GMO or anything, but they've just kind of crossed the DNA where it's, it stays sweet a lot longer now. I don't know, the old wives' tale was, get your pot boiling before you go out and pick your corn. Cause it loses sweetness once you pick it, but nowadays it lasts a lot longer. Like I'll have it in the fridge for a week or 2 and it's still sweet. Got some ladybugs, the corn, the aphids really liked corn, so. Ladybugs really helped. I definitely saw a difference. More tomatoes, so I string the tomatoes from the high tunnel pillars. I just run bigger line up the top, and then I have I've learned to use strong line, like Ganyan line, coming down maybe like 5 feet, and then tying a biodegradable line onto that. Because I started out with biodegradable line, and it just mid-season sometimes it would just break. So and it's also nice because you could just use it season after season. So after the season, I just cut the biodegradable line. And then I still have half the line hanging down. That wasn't confusing.
Guys on Zoom wanted to see where you're pointing.
Is that better?
All indeterminate.
Yeah. So, yeah, I put cardboard in the walkways. Take all the plastic and stuff off first. Try. But it really helps keep the weeds down. And then it just kind of goes into the soil. So I'm mainly growing tomatoes now, so anyway, that's the setup. There's 6 rows. Yeah. And there's an example of grass clippings on the cardboard. Them in late summer, I guess, late July. Marigolds are awesome to plant with. Tomatoes, peppers, the nightshades, aphids love them, so marigolds definitely help. Cause I've had the aphids on corn and I didn't plant marigolds with them, but they don't touch the tomatoes. So I've had them around, but they just don't get on the tomatoes, and I'm attributing it to the marigolds. So, yeah. I also prune really heavily on my tomatoes. I plant them a foot apart. Some people would say that it's too close, but I heavy prune them, so that's kind of hard to explain, but basically cut off lower leaves and then the suckers.
There's a question asking if tomatoes are determinate.
No. They're indeterminate. Those are singles to the left and then sweet 100s here. Some ready for market. Those are heirloom tomatoes. People seem to love the purple ones. Right, just because of the color.
Do you remember what you had there? Do
Sorry,
you remember that variety?
the purple ones? Actually, they're called Blue Beauty.
Oh, okay.
Even though they look purple. And then another variety that was growing Cherokee purples, Brandywine. This one called Abe Lincoln. It's beef steak that gets pretty big.
Were the Cherokee purples, were they all purple or were they like this purple on top and more blush? And
They're actually not purple at all. I don't know why they're called Cherokee purple. They're like a deep red. And then they tend to have a little like green on the top. Yeah. They get really soft though. This is cucumbers. I do the same trellis system with the cucumbers. I mean, not trellis, but the lines coming down. I actually don't really know the best way to prune cucumbers. I just do them kind of like tomatoes. Cucumbers get suckers in between the leaves. You know, a sucker will grow a whole new plant, so you want to take those off. So you want one plant on one string. So.
What variety?
Of cucumbers? Good question. I think they were called Monica. They're self-pollinating. And then I had a Japanese kind, but I forget the name of it. And there's some corn to the left there. I just grew a little patch last year. This is outside, so that first row I think is cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and then this is beets and carrots. The cabbage, I was growing like a miniature kind, so I planted them two side by side in the bed. And the broccoli, it's one every foot. So I'm still trying to figure out my spacing. Really, I don't really know the best way.
Anna, we had a question in the chat about the cucumbers and whether they are parthenocarpic. If anyone knows what that word means.
So that means.
I think that's like self-pollinated.
Self-pollinated.
And if they're in a greenhouse, probably.
And I think they might only have female blooms.
Yeah. Right. Do you have a feeding program that you use for things that are heavy feeders like tomatoes and cucumbers? Or are you mostly counting on having your soil prepped in the spring and you're just watering?
The latter, yeah, I just get my soil tested, amend it, and then just water. We have a drip system. Drip tape, so it's automatic. Which I think is better for tomatoes anyway. You don't really want to overhead water them. So the drip tape also helps conserve water. Yeah, I've never side dressed before. I've never had a problem, so I've never done it.
What amendments do you typically use in the spring?
It kind of depends, but lately my soil's been high in nitrogen, so it's been seabird guano, which is just phosphorus, I believe. Okay, thanks, I got the approval. Yeah, so it just all depends. I don't know, the soil changes every year.
And
So-
compost? Or just the grass?
Just the grass. Yeah. This year I got my hands on some biochar, so I added that. So that'll be interesting to see what happens.
Did you try and charge it up with stuff first? You did, so some kind of tea or something?
Fish carcasses. What else did I use? Grass clippings, some compost, urine. I think that's it. Oh, kelp also. And I just put it in some swimming pools, little kiddie swimming pools.
Let it all work in there, stir it up, and then
Mm-hmm.
take the char out and put it in your beds.
Mm-hmm. So the biochar is really new to me, so I'm not really,
Yeah, I'm familiar with it, but I've never used it.
yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
For the record, carpy is the process of producing fruit without fertilization, resulting in seedless fruit. Word comes from the Greek words parthenos, virgin, and karpos, fruit. The more you know.
Okay. It's just washing beets. That's my washing station. It's rudimentary. I don't have a washing station covered building. So that's it. I think that's hardware cloth it's called. The wire stuff, and then just like screw it down on like a 2x4 frame. It works well. That's me doing potatoes. This is a nice experiment. So Saskia, she is in charge of the food or the seed library. Anyway, she told me about these sugar. I forget, sugar something.
Sugar pie?
Sugar pie. Yeah. Pumpkins, and they actually will grow outside. At least down where I am. I'm not sure up on the ridge, but so that has been awesome to grow pumpkins outside. I always thought you had to grow them inside. These are spaghetti squash. You do have to grow those in a high tunnel. They do really well in a high tunnel. They just take up a lot of room, so
You grow them on the ground then?
I tried the Three Sisters thing and that didn't really work.
There's a lot of management, I think, in this.
Yeah. And then the corn kind of shaded everything out. I plant the corn too close together also. I'm sure if it was spaced better, I could grow squash underneath the corn and then beans up the corn, but it just it didn't work out for me, so. That was, so those are some other winter squash that grow well in a high tunnel. The red ones are called red curry, Japanese variety, and the blue ones are called blue Hubbard. And then there's some spaghetti squash. This is a butternut squash, and I can't grow those. I don't know why, but I think acorn and butternut they have some kind of thing going on where they don't grow well here. So the only animals I have are meat chickens. And then I put them in with the corn. And I plant cover crops with the corn. There's some cover crops. So the chickens feed on the cover crops and kind of fertilize the corn or the soil. What's the idea
What
behind
kind of
that?
cover crops are you using?
Yeah, gosh, it was a variety. It was like daikon, turnips, sweet peas, ryegrass. Other kind of turnip and some other kind of brassica. Like them. So
So after you harvest corn, if I could ask, so do you pull the plants? And then, cover this and kill it back, or? How do you manage, what do you do with that?
ideally, yeah.
Okay,
I just kind of run out of energy at the end of the season.
Huh.
So I usually won't even get to it until the spring. I'm getting better about cleaning out my tunnels in the fall, because it definitely gives you a jump if you do it in the fall. But what I do is, because I like to leave the roots in the soil, take loppers and just cut them off at soil level. Which can be kind of hard because it's hard to get really all of it under the soil. So you have this little thing sticking up, which can be kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I just compost the stalks.
how do you do?
Yeah. They take years to break down. Something new that I did last year was get into bees. That's kind of just an exciting experiment for me. Actually, Bill's gave me some advice on that one too.
Are they wintering over?
I lost one hive, but I have two more that are still going.
What kind of bees did you end up picking out?
Arrows.
Part of the other ones?
Yeah. I didn't get any honey. It wasn't a very good year. Grapes is something I'm also experimenting with. I planted them maybe like 6 years ago and I had pretty good success, but then last year, I think with that cold spell we had for a week or two, killed them off. So I only have one plant left. Sad, but
What other permaculture stuff you got in there?
you mean like permanent stuff?
Yeah, grapes.
Grapes, the asparagus. I have the grapes and the asparagus together, so the grapes grow up on the side of the high tunnel. And then I have asparagus below the grapes.
Which variety of grapes are you growing?
Concord, and then get the other variety. It begins with a T.
Thompson?
Thompson. that's another experiment that was kind of fun, but I won't do again. I got some little melons called a Minnesota midget melon. I grew them with the tomatoes. This is a vine here. And I had success. I think that was 2019 though, when we had that really hot summer. So they need a lot of heat, and I've tried growing them again for like 2 years after that, and I didn't get any, so I don't grow them anymore. But it is fun to try.
So maybe people in the interior where it gets hotter and more
They
intense.
definitely could, yeah. But Homer is just, yeah, you don't get the sun and the heat. Even though the high tunnel gets really hot, but anyway, we need a lot of sun. So this is my favorite experiment that I'm growing, which is pawpaw trees. Anyone doesn't know what a pawpaw is, it's called the America's Forgotten Fruit. They're native to the Midwest. They grow wild, but nobody knows about them because you can't ship them. They fall off the tree when they're ripe, so you can't just pick them off the tree and let time ripen them. They just ripen off the tree, and they're really soft, so you can't ship them. Anyway, they're 6 years old now. I got two. Last year or 2 years ago, I got flower. That's what the flower looks like. It's really pretty. But it smells weird because they get pollinated with flies. So people say to put like dead fish by them too. You have to have 2 different varieties to get fruit. So I only had the one tree fruit, flower, so I didn't get a fruit. And then they didn't flower last year, so kind of disappointing. So hopefully this year they'll both flower. They'll be like 8 years old, so. But they grow really slow. I mean, you can tell how big they are. But I'm getting into, those are seedling, pawpaw seedlings that I started from seed, and we'll graft onto next year to try to propagate them because I like them so much. Yeah. That's a peach tree that I planted last year. And I shouldn't have planted it where I did. I planted it in the corner. Which is a mistake. I might move them actually this spring. To more in the center. This is the end wall over here. I might just move it in the center of the end wall and kind of do a espalier type technique with it. So anyway, that's just another fun thing. That's it.
You had been a commercial fisherman during this, major startup time, but this year you transitioned out of that and went farmer full time. So can you tell us a little bit about that transition and what you're experiencing and how you're marketing what you're doing?
Sure. So the first like 5 years I was growing, I was setting it in Hobbit Cove, so that was convenient because I would come back 3 days a week into town, so I could still garden and stuff when I came back into town. And it was more of a hobby thing. I was selling to the food hub. I didn't really see myself doing it as a living per se at that point. I just was really into growing. It's like a passion of mine, so it was just a fun hobby basically. And then like 4 years ago, I went to Bristol Bay for a couple of years, so I obviously couldn't come back into town, so I was away for 6 weeks. That's when I planted the corn. My friend Mike, who's my farm partner, he was there kind of taking care of stuff. And, yeah, and then Bristol Bay kind of had that hit a couple of years ago. So I decided to farm full time.
And what about marketing this year with the hub down?
Yeah, so that'll be a change, next year. With the food hub not being available. But I did the farmer's market last summer and I'll do it again this summer. That'll be my main outlet, I guess. Yeah.
Are you trying to keep track of your numbers, what you're putting in versus what you're getting out, if you're making a profit or not?
I should. I'm really bad about doing that. Yeah. I should do a spreadsheet and, yeah, figure all that stuff out, but. I don't know, I just see it, it is what it is, and I get what I get, and I just kind of have that mentality, but when you do it for a business, I definitely should, get more structural into that, yeah.
If you have, what do you got? You got like an acre of growing space roughly?
Yep.
Do you have a rough idea of what you know, gross a year?
I have a rough idea, yeah. I mean, I'm not that, like, yeah, I don't keep track of that, but. Yeah, and then, I don't know, and then each year there's just so many changes, with the weather and everything. Last year, my broccoli didn't do well at all, and I was kind of counting on that to be one of my main kind of staples. So, the tomatoes are definitely a good retail thing to grow. Not many other people are doing it, the other farmers. So,
Yeah, tomatoes are big and beautiful.
yeah, thanks.
Somebody in the Zoom would like to know, then very related to that, what would you think your best selling vegetable is? And they didn't see turnips. You grown those too?
Yeah, the salad turnips, yeah. Yeah, the tomatoes are the main moneymaker going on. Carrots would be second. Everyone loves carrots. Broccoli would probably be third. Cucumbers, I'm not really that great at growing cucumbers. Farmer Rob is very good at growing cucumbers. Yeah, garlic I'm kind of getting away from a bit. Kind of get to grow more carrots this year.
Curious, why are you moving away from garlic?
It's hard to sell.
Okay.
Yeah. And Lori's, the big garlic lady,
Sure.
and I don't want to be competition for her anyway.
Your garlic's fantastic. I bought it on a Food Hub.
Thanks.
And I have to ask, what do you do for slug management outside?
Sluggo. Yeah. But it's organic and
How often do you apply the Sluggo?
just depends. Maybe once a week. If it's gonna rain a lot, I won't even do it because it's just kind of a waste and it's expensive. But Mike came up with a genius idea. He took a, what are those cedars called? I don't know, the most basic cedar you can buy.
The Chang seafood?
The what? Not the Jang, it's Earthway. And you put Sluggo in there, and then you just walk around with your cedar and just, it spreads Sluggo for you.
Sure.
Cause it's a very time consuming thing. And it's all about being efficient with your time. Cause farming is just a lot of work. So. Yeah, that definitely saves a lot of time.
I have a question here in the chat, regarding your setup. Did you obtain the high tunnel through the USDA NRCS program or on your own? And if you did through NRCS, what was your experience with that program?
Yeah, we got the high tunnels through the NRCS program. Like I mentioned before, Mike fronted the money, so. Through the program, you have to front the money to buy the high tunnel, and then they pay you back. So I definitely had help with that. I could not manage that by myself. I didn't have the financial equity to do that. The experience with the first one was super easy. 2016, we got the first one and the rules were totally different. Now it's a little more harder to get a high tunnel. I think one of the most challenging things now is the slope. You can't have more than a 4% slope. And that's just like,
I work in RCS.
okay,
If you don't, it's 5%. So
okay,
it's 1 foot for every 20 feet is your drop for slope. And yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make sure we clarified that.
yeah, thanks. So anyway, that could be kind of a challenge for people because we had to get heavy equipment in there to get the topsoil up. We had a 7% slope. So anyway, that was a little harder, challenging. But overall, it was a great experience with the grant program. I would say.
Did they help you out with your irrigation system and things like that too? Or are you working with them on other aspects of the farm?
No, kind of figured out the irrigation on our own. Yeah, it's just the drip inside and then we just have sprinklers outside.
Do they reimburse you 100% of the installation costs of it?
Yeah,
You just submit your receipts to them. Does it compensate you for the time that you put into it as well? Or is it just the material costs? Where are they reimbursing you?
she can probably answer that.
So it's based on a by square foot rate, so it kind of depends on what your we're mapped out a little differently for each size. We do have a rate for smaller tunnels now versus higher, like larger tunnels.
As far as the amount that they're reimbursing you for the labor.
Yeah, well, so
It's a matter of how efficient.
well,
you
it's
are.
all bundled into one, so when they calculate those rates, it includes shipping, labor, materials, all of that kind of stuff, so it covers a portion. In theory, it's supposed to cover some, like, we're not supposed to say percentages, we just say a rate, because it varies a lot per person, like what kind of materials. If you use hard plastic, right, you know, those big sheets of 8x4 plastic on your end walls, those cost way more than just using, you know, regular plastic. Like the.
So they have like a
metal-
square foot, a rate per square foot.
Yeah.
And you can actually use higher end materials. They're not gonna compensate you
No.
for the additional or
Right.
premium
But
material.
your labor, so when you hear people saying like, oh, I got free high tunnel, it's because they generally weren't counting in their labor, because I'm sure if you were to
Yeah.
pay yourself a living wage, you probably wouldn't, you know, you would put more hours in
Yeah.
on that. So if you're okay with making, you know, quote unquote 50 cents an hour, putting up your high tunnel, then you probably would make money,
Yeah.
and be able to, you know, so it's all, we tell people before they sign the contract and then you can decide. And next week we'll be going into those kind of details. Yeah.
Do they issue a specification like minimum building standards? I mean, you have to use at least this quality but then will they actually reimburse you for say if you wanted to go in and put an actual, glass with a curtain wall kind of construction or?
So I think that's a good question for us to sit down, because people have very specific questions. I can grab my card and we can set up a time to chat so that Hannah, everyone can keep asking her
Please.
questions.
Yeah, I don't wanna capitalize on the time, that's for sure.
No, we'll have a whole talk next week.
Yeah,
on
next week.
NRCS
Oh,
programs as well,
okay.
so.
One, how tall is your fence around your outside garden? does that really keep everything out that you want to keep out? Or are you just getting lucky? And then two, where are you sourcing your seed stock for things that are a little trickier, like the pawpaws or your grapes?
Okay, your first question. The fence is probably like 6.5 feet tall. I just recently made it taller. Again, thanks to Bill, he gave me some spruce poles. But that just happened this fall. So anyway, nothing has gotten in the summer. I don't have many moose down there, luckily. They go up top mainly, but even this, a moose won't really try to get in. But in the winter, they have gotten in, and that's where I've lost fruit trees. Because yeah, they just hop over. Even when there's no snow, they can just hop it, so. But hopefully now it's taller. It's like 8-9 feet tall now. And I just use old seine web for the fence part. And then 4x4s. And then now the spruce poles. And then your second question, I usually get my seeds at Johnny's or Bedco. Baker Creek, I've gotten all my heirloom tomatoes from. The pawpaws I bought from Stark Brothers. They're a fruit tree company. I've bought several fruit trees from them. They're a really good company, I think. The shipping's kind of expensive though. The seeds I got on Etsy, I just bought pawpaw seeds and germinated them. And then you can buy scion wood from, there's a website that you can buy scion wood from, like if you're into grafting. A cheap way to get like apple trees is just like buy rootstock or you can sprout seeds. I don't, Bill probably wouldn't agree with me on that one, but you could graft, just buy scion wood, get scion wood locally and just graft them. And the grapes I got from Stark Brothers as well. But there's, I don't know, you could get them locally as well. Like Wagon Wheel carries grapes. Yeah, but the pawpaws I would definitely recommend Stark Brothers.
I killed my pawpaw seedlings on accident.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, they were germinating and I didn't realize they were germinating as fast as they were.
Yeah, they take a long time. I've killed some before. Cause it's just, they take so long and then you dig them up and then, oh, sprouting. And pawpaws are difficult because they have a long taproot. You have to be really careful with them when you're transplanting.
Okay, we have a question in the chat regarding your water situation. Do you have a water tank or is your irrigation system hooked into your home water supply?
It's through a well. So. Yeah, it's just like on a timer. With the drip tape in the high tunnel and then outside is sprinklers set up pretty much. The well is not for home use, it's just for the garden. Because it's not the best water. House water is delivered. And I try to use rainwater also.
How do you catch that? Like, what's your MO for catching the rainwater and getting it down to your stuff?
Well, we've got big fish totes that catches. I can't remember how many gallons they hold, but they catch all the water, and I just put like a submersible pump in it, and it's basically just for the outside. And then I usually just spray the hose because it's not enough water to hook up to the sprinkler system.
And you're just collecting it in gutters off the tunnel itself or off your house or?
Off the house, yeah. I'd like to eventually collect them off the tunnels. Haven't figured out a good way to do that yet. Any other questions?
Do you have, like an equal affection for annuals versus perennials, or are you starting to get more interested in perennials when it comes to trees and vines and things like that?
I'm definitely getting more interested, yeah. I'd like to plant more asparagus and strawberries. The grapes, I'm not sure. I'm on the fence about the grapes.
Have you heard of like a little bit more of a hardy variety like King of the North or Valiant or I think those are the names?
I tried King of the North and it died second year, I think. But where I planted them isn't the best. So that's probably part of my problem. It's a little wet. It's in the high tunnel, but it's on the edge and it's kind of a wet spot. Water kind of funnels in there. I think that's probably the problem. Do something about that, so. Yeah. But I know, Oceanside, they're like a mile east of me and they grow great grapes. For years, so. I think it's just my soil situation.
Almost exactly 7 o'clock.
All right.
I might put up our slides showing our next couple of presentations. Thank you to everyone who came on Zoom, and then we have a bunch of flyers and resources and pamphlets and also some free seeds if anyone wants to take some for their garden. So, thank you so much.